We're going to move on to item 7.4, consideration and discussion of an agreement with AMPM Consulting LLC for departmental and countywide capital improvement planning services for an amount not to exceed $157,950 and authorize the chair to sign. Mr. Rickelman, welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, but it's the small. I could email it to you.
Micro.
Yeah, the PowerPoint. And then Kevin Corrin, the contractor, should be able to do it.
Yes.
Okay, great.
There he is. Good afternoon, board.
Is it green?
It is green.
Keep talking. I'm sure Sam will get you.
1, 2, 3. Looks like it's on, but the light on?
When
Okay.
in doubt, push it.
The push button. It's right there. Good afternoon, Ben Rickelman, Deputy County Administrative Officer, here with a proposed planning contract regarding capital improvements. So keeping on that theme. So the county issued an RFP to look at how we can have an overall vision with capital planning and work with individual departments too. It would definitely be building off the facilities improvement plan and the work Glenn and Public Works is doing with their 10-year CIP, and then also the work Robin's doing now with special districts. So it'd be a collaborative effort. AMPM, this is their specialty, is working with local governments and other entities on capital planning. How can you be more efficient and effective with your capital planning, and then how does it relate to strategic planning? So this is their general kind of 180-day implementation time frame, and the initial process is working with the departments on figuring out metrics and how do you score these projects for prioritization. So then you can think through funding and strategic planning, and thinking through also what are the constraints. So that's at the departmental level, and then at the county level, they would be combined. And a lot of local governments operate this way with capital planning. Some take a 5-year time frame, some do a 6, some do a 10. Some are locked in with available funding, and some are more of a planning framework where it's not necessarily a budgetary lock-in. So we would initially, this would be a planning mechanism. And Kevin, if you want to provide any more comments kind of on the time frame and overall vision, that would be great.
Sure. Yeah, you were doing great, Ben. I was just going to let you run with it. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to visit with you. As Ben said, my name's Kevin Corwin with AMPM Consulting. And yeah, we're very excited about this project and the opportunity to help you all implement a strategic capital improvement plan countywide, and as Ben said, department-wide. And so yeah, these are the general stages of the project that we've identified. And I think there's a few more slides on each one of these. And then this is the general timelines that we've outlined for each of those stages.
Yeah, and this is just going into a bit more detail, the initial work with the departments, and so figuring out metrics and then the modeling that goes with that. We'd also be working with the treasurer, tax collector, and administration with different financial scenarios. So just thinking through kind of, is kind of the baseline, and then if there's funding opportunities out there, debt service, and so this is just different scenarios and how it would impact capital spending.
Yeah, so the initial effort will be, sitting down with the departments and, kind of learning what their process is internally of identifying projects. Obviously, Public Services already has a 5-year CIP that they work through and work on a routine basis, and bringing the same idea to the other departments, and then also, doing high level planning. So what we want to try to accomplish is, can we get, again, high level scope, schedule, costs, and benefits of not every active project even, but every potential project. And then we want to talk through ideas on metrics. Well, how are we going to determine what the benefit, from a quantitative standpoint, what the benefit of every project is? And so that's a lot of what the initial formation is going to be. Is, well, let's identify what potential projects are out there.
Next slide. So I've touched on this a bit, but when thinking through all these projects, identifying time range, and then the revenue levels and funding sources, and then optimization is a big part of this. And so thinking through, since we've identified all these projects, how do we rank them considering cost, timing, difficulty, and benefits? And that will be a countywide effort.
Yeah, so we'll set up scenarios, and what we want to look at in each of the scenarios is, we can vary the time ranges that we're looking at. We can vary, the revenue levels and the periods for those revenue levels. We can run scenarios with $10 million per year or $20 million per year, whatever is appropriate, and we can sort of do sensitivity tests of, well, what gives us, what's achievable potentially. And that's a lot of what we're working with the Treasurer and Tax Collection Department will be about, is identifying, well, what are those funding source options? What are the, sort of ranges of levels that could be achieved from all of those funding sources? And then there's always going to be critical projects. So that critical projects list, I always throw that in, because there's always going to be, certain projects when you run these scenarios, like, hey, this project, no matter what, we got a grant, it has to start by this date or it has to finish by this date. And so we can put those constraints in as well and run scenarios with those options.
Next slide. So a critical part of this, I'll use that word again, is engagement with the community and within the county government itself. So kind of halfway through this process, when we have a lot of the projects reports and a decent handle on the overall project, engaging with the community regarding metrics, scorecards, and funding sources, and then talking through scenario constraints and targets, so we can get that critical feedback and then incorporate it into the final work product.
And we'll do our level best to, engagement is something you want to do throughout a development of a CIP. And so as we develop, sort of a first round of scenarios, well, then we can seek feedback on those scenarios, and then we can go back and that's why I love the word refinement. On that previous slide, that's a lot of the refining process of then tweaking the scenario and then seeing what the output is. Maybe we need to think about a metric that we didn't identify. And we can incorporate that metric, and how is that metric going to be measured, and what are the data sources we're going to use for certain metrics. And so those are all things that we can get input on throughout the process.
InScope is project planning software, so this gives a view on individual projects, but then you can also scope out and look at kind of the entire flow of capital projects here, and how the metrics impact their rankings and delivery schedules. Is there anything else you want to add, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, the iron triangle, as it's called, or sometimes referred to in project management on the right. I mean, that's really what the product is focused on. Is just trying to create a simple product a simple platform where all the departments, all the projects get structured the same way. Again, what we're interested in is, hey, what's the scope? What's the work that needs to be done? What's the schedule, timeline that's going to be kept? What are the estimated costs for all the projects? And then what are the quantified estimated benefits for the project? So if we have all those in one spot, in one place, then we can leverage that data. That's the data that we leverage in order to run scenarios.
Next slide.
And
Do you want to speak to kind of these two tables here, Kevin?
Yeah, this is just it's just a very simple illustration for this idea behind optimization. For a long time, I mean, I think the process of developing CIPs, and I did it myself, I've worked on many CIPs. I was a city engineer for a long time, and you come up with a way of ranking projects and then estimate those costs, and you sort of go from a worst first or best first sort of approach, whichever you use. You can use cost benefit ratios. I mean, all kinds of different ways that people have come up with to prioritize projects over time. The only problem is you can get into situations like in this example here, sort of the traditional approach on top. You got all these projects. You start with the best or the worst one first. You do the projects. Well, you could run out of money, or you could just not do as much projects. And if you think in terms of total benefit, that's what that very bottom row is supposed to illustrate. If you've ranked these projects, hey, these are the quantified benefits of the projects. You got a rolling total benefit that you're achieving with each project and each dollar that's invested. Well, if we let the computer do the work of that and do the analysis of that, the computer could come up with a different sort of arrangement, taking into account the time factor as well and how long it takes and when, not just how much is going to be spent, but when is it going to be spent. And so maybe it's better to do 250 projects versus a 100 project sort of thing. And so that's what the computer analysis is designed to do, is look at all the possible configurations of all the projects and all the benefits, and what gives us the optimum arrangement of a CIP. What gives us the greatest benefit in the shortest amount of time for the dollars that we have available. And so, for example, in this simplified example, on the table below, you actually get more projects done at a higher aggregate benefit in your program than you do with just a more, scoring worst or best scoring basis approach. So that's the idea behind, using a computer to optimize this capital improvement program.
So this is from the City of Austin's strategic capital improvement plan, and what they're doing is overlaying different city priorities with also capital investments. So I'm not saying Lake County would look exactly like this, but the idea is with our general plan upcoming and other board initiatives, doing some sort of geospatial analysis would be really useful, especially with kind of this longer range CIP planning and the complications of our utility districts here and all the issues we face in Lake County with wildfire risk and other issues.
And we can use that general plan. We can use output from the general plan to inform the metrics, and that would be the goal, is to identify the metrics factors that from the general plan that help to influence the prioritization.
Kevin, do you want to speak on this GIS map a little bit?
Yeah, and this is an example from prior work that we've done. This is from the city of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. And that's the unique thing about capital projects is they, of course, facilities projects happen inside a facility, as we know, but most capital projects, if we're talking infrastructure, they have a spatial component. I mean, they take place on physical sites and spaces. And so one thing, really just about every client I've worked with now that we've done is we've connected, the idea of project management and spatial management, reflecting a project and a capital investment within the spatial context, within a map context, so that, and this is a great tool to communicate to your public, to communicate to potential real or potential stakeholders, just for yourselves as well, just to know what's going on and what the status of projects are. Being able to visualize it on a map, it's a lot easier than many times than reading a document. And there's just such great GIS tools out there now, and you can render projects in different ways, and you can feed data, you can integrate data back and forth. And so that's the idea behind this, is use this as really a stakeholder engagement, public engagement tool. And then ongoing, not just for the development of the CIP, but then ongoing to, report out what progress is being made on the CIP. The other thing I'll mention too about the GIS aspect, when you, and I was so happy to see Lake County go ahead and incorporate the GIS services into this, because we can use that for the metrics. So we can actually, depending on the data sources, we can use GIS analysis to establish and calculate, what the metric is once we establish a project footprint. And I'll just give you one example, anything that's based on the American Census. And, perhaps you want the number of individuals with disabilities within a certain radius, of a project or a potential project. And that, that is a quantifiable metric that you can use, and then incorporate that into your scorecard, which incorporates it into the prioritization process. So just very cool things that you can do with GIS now.
So a great thing about this project too is it has a lot of applications outside of direct government operations. So I was kind of talking about a complicated utility situation, and this could be a tool to help speak to outside investors and kind of explain the status quo and also what the potential pipeline is. Going after state and federal funding, this won't make something ready for pre-construction application, but it'll get the wheel turning, and it'll get us, I think, much better prepared to act on funding opportunities, at least site selection. So explaining in conjunction kind of with zoning, what are the capacities, what's coming, that's always useful for them, especially the visual elements. When I've worked with site selectors in the past, the quicker they can have the information, the easier it is to digest, the more likely they are going to stay with you and follow up. And then also it could be a great tool for strategic planning for outside organizations. We now have the foundation here, and thinking through the county's long-range capital spending could really be a positive impact on their thinking. That concludes the presentation.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Any comments or questions? Supervisor Pyska.
Well, we are just in strategic planning mode across the board, and I think it's important that we're leveraging all of our plans and coordinating all of the work so that we can get products that will help us attract investment and manage our assets. So I think this is great. So thanks for putting this together, Ben.
Thank you for your comment. Any other comments or questions? Supervisor Green?
Yeah, just on the strategic side, and also there's reference to debt financing and stuff like that. So just like commented on the last item, you got to re-examine past assumptions pretty aggressively. This contract would be a great time and place to at least kick a couple tires on, because how you finance projects and what little WYSIWYG tools you do to forecast those needs is one thing, but the vision thing is on us. It's on this board. It's on this community. So before they go too deep down these various rabbit holes and talk about things like debt financing in particular, being able to bake in a fresh examination somehow of our own capital needs to help inform this contract as it proceeds would be cool. And I don't know if that's Space Committee or some other type of thing, but this contract basically reinforces the point. We've got to be bold, and some things we definitely want to examine all the strategic things we can to get these capital projects moving. We may also question the need to proceed in certain directions, and that would give us cost savings and the ability to maybe even avoid debt financing some things. So love this, going to support it, but to me it's a good opportunity to raise some of those questions.
Thank you very much. This reminds me of a conversation I had with CAO Parker before she was CAO Parker in my office about a comprehensive plan. And I think we're getting there. This is not the complete package, but piece by piece, we are putting it together. And I was happy to see the connection to GIS. I hope that there's some very public-facing documents that are easy to find. Supervisor Pyska mentioned it for investors. We want people to see what we're planning to do so they know where to invest their dollars appropriately so that it's going to be the best return on investment as they can make. So I think that it's important to have that GIS concept. Anything else that can be provided to ensure that there's easy access to understanding. And I hope that we can show that not only is it our strategic plan for the future, but here's what it was in the past 2 years, and that we've accomplished the things that were on our list to get done, so that that can lead to a level of trust from investors that what is being planned is going to get done. And that takes fine-tuning of our plan to ensure it's not a pie-in-the-sky type of plan. It's very feet on the ground. This is something we can accomplish because we have access to the funds. So I'm looking forward to this. I think this is great. I believe we're looking at about a 6-month time frame from signing today to potentially this being completed. And that's a decent timeline in my opinion, and looking forward to the final product.
Sounds great. And yes, we can incorporate what the county's delivered in the last few years. And as part of the work product, there is going to be an outward-facing GIS-driven site that will have kind of a narrative element. And then we'll also have an internal site for kind of project management.
Yeah, no, that's very good. Very excited. Anything further? Oh, Vice Chair Crandall.
Yes. So I notified the Central Region Town Hall last night that this would be on the agenda. There was a citizen that had asked, as we were talking about collaboration, I think it was the Glen Haven fire and that whole situation where everyone came together, and someone said, well, it would be nice to see the county do that. And I said, well, this is a step towards that. So yeah, I think it's a great thing.
All right, let's go ahead and open it up for public comment. Anyone wish to speak on this item? No hands in Zoom, no movement in the chamber, bringing it back to the board for action.
I move that we approve the agreement with AMPM Consulting LLC for an amount not to exceed $157,950 and authorize the chair to sign.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for bringing this.